Ladies and gentlemen, we've gathered here for a very important lecture. That's why we call it as Allama Iqbal lecture. And I'll start with one of his verses until we all settle down. Zamir Maghrib hai tajrana and Zamir Mashriq hai rahibana. Wahan digar gu hai lehza lehza aur yahan badalta nahi zamana. So today for an important session we have invited Taimur Salim Khan Jhagrra Sahab, who's also the Finance Minister for Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. For this session, we have Dr. Mohammad Mohsin, Director IM Sciences, as the chair of the session. Moreover, we have Dr. Ishrat Hussain as the chief guest of the session. But more importantly, I would like to invite Vice Chancellor, Pakistan Institute of Development Economics, Dr. Nadeemul Haq, to kindly give us a review of what special things we have done on 35th AGM of PSDE. Please give a big round of applause.
Assalamu alaikum ji. Jhagrra Sahab, Minister for Finance, thank you very much for honoring us with this lecture that you're about to give, the Allama Iqbal lecture, which is one of our most important lectures. So we thought since we're coming to KPK, it has to be you. Ishrat Sahab, thank you very much for agreeing to be chief guest. Mohsin Sahab, the chairman of the session, thank you very much for allowing us. Mohsin Sahab has been most generous. We've worked with the IM team. IM team has been excellent. This conference is all due to the IM team. We must congratulate and give a big hand to the IM team, please. I'm going to take only 2 minutes to tell Jhagrra Sahab and Ishrat Sahab both what has happened in the last 2 days, because I think it's good to give them context so that they can speak. Jhagrra Sahab, the conference has been discussing opportunity for the last 2 days, and we fixed the topic opportunity because, quite frankly, the dialogue in Pakistan is very skewed towards equality and welfare. And what we discovered in the last 2 days is that the state of opportunity is alarming. Alarming today and even more when we look forward. We've moved away from the usual dialogue of macro and poverty. We've tried to talk about opportunity, and as you can see, we've got a number of students, about 500 students, who are actively participating
to this session. And let me also welcome our keynote speaker, Mr. Taimur Salim Jhagrra Sahab, for whom we've been waiting. We've been hearing that he's coming, and usually I've always learned something from his addresses. So I'm sure his address will be very knowledgeable for us, pertinent to what we've been hearing last 3 days, and I hope you will all enjoy it. I will not take too much time. My colleagues here, they do not need any introduction. Dr. Ishrat Hussain, he's been on the stage for, I think, more than 40 years, I would say, if I'm correct, and in different roles as Governor State Bank of Pakistan, then as Director IBA, and very helpful to us also. And then, of course, he was assisting the Prime Minister in reforms and a lot of areas. So we welcome the Minister, we welcome Dr. Ishrat Hussain, and of course I feel that Dr. Nadeem is part of IM Sciences. Last few days have been, we've been working together. I certainly appreciate and thank him that he is brought this conference here for the first time in KPK, and we have learned quite a lot in organizing a conference of such a level, inviting speakers from the international market, from Pakistan, everyone, name it, in their specific areas. So we hope that today's lecture, today's all other events, and tomorrow, they will be even more knowledgeable for us, for all of you, and we hope that we'll learn a lot with from this conference. So I would request our Honorable Minister to please start the address, and I think other members who are sitting here, they will not be speaking on this subject. After Taimur Jhagrra Sahab's address, then you can have some questions. So thank you very much for coming.
Wow, it's good to see all these faces. What gives me pride is that Peshawar is once again a place where we can actually debate, where we can actually be the center of attention, where we can have conferences such as this, because this was not the case a few years ago. And I hope that we continue this momentum. Thank you, Ishrat Saab. Thank you, Dr. Nadeem. And thank you, everyone, for being here. I said wow because when preparing for this lecture, I opened the conference schedule, and just to see the names and the topics that we are discussing, for all you students over here, grasp these opportunities. You will learn more if you actually take away from people's experience than you would through many of your classes, with due apologies to your teachers and to traditional learning. So hopefully this will shine a spotlight, of course, on how Peshawar wants to contribute to the national discourse, but also to the thirst and eagerness and the talent that all of you have, and the potential that inshallah you guys are going to fulfill. I'm very sure of that. Nadeem Saab was talking about the job market, and I want to try and encapsulate my lecture in 3 words: ambition, hope, perseverance. This morning, a party worker voice messaged me. You know, we have local government elections over here, and his preferred candidate did not get the ticket that he was hoping for. And he wanted to give me some feedback. You could hear the disappointment in his voice. And what he said was that someone like you who's done so much work in the area, which made me proud, but he said, look, I want to tell you that you're not on the right path, and this always happens when PTI is giving tickets, but he said, I'm losing hope. And it's like, he said, what I want to do is, I want to give you feedback that what you should try and do is stop trying not to be a traditional politician, and you want to make individuals happy. Start giving people individual jobs, because he was disappointed. He said, I'm not sure this system will change. Right? And so I messaged him to come over. He lives about 10 minutes from my house. And I just wanted to give him one message, which was, there will be disappointment in life, but you never lose hope, and you never compromise on principle, because if you do that, and if you keep ambition, then that's how individuals succeed, that's how communities succeed, and that's how countries succeed. Right? And I'm going to meet him later on. But I think this is our challenge. We don't think big enough. We don't think that things can change. We don't think that there are individual pathways for us that can lead to both individual success and collective success. And that's why perhaps this country hasn't grown in the way that other countries have, despite all the potential that we have. Now, I want to reflect on my very short experience. It's still less than 4 years as a politician in government, to say that yes, things can change. I think if you were to ask me personally, I would have loved to have done a lot more than we have, but I still think that hopefully, and you people have to be the judge of that, that both personally but as well collectively as a government, we have done enough to crack open sort of doors that were resistant to change. Right? And I'm going to give you specific examples and our story here in Pakhtunkhwa over the last 4 years and sort of link it. I'm not an economist. A lot of words that Nadeem Saab and other distinguished economists such as him use scare me. So I'll try and talk in simpler terms. But I will tell you that certainly one of the keys to growth, to prosperity, to improving the lot in this country, to improving the job market, lies in better use of financial resources, in having more financial resources available and spending them in the right way, right, to create more opportunities for all of you. Right? And when that happens, the entire country grows. The entire country becomes more confident. The entire country gets a much bigger voice on the international stage, more so than any amount of military might that we might have. The PTI government in the previous 5 years had done a lot in terms of transforming both the peace and security situation of this province, and as well as changing the fabric of the social sector and of governance. The teachers hired in schools, the doctors, thousands of doctors hired for the periphery. There's a police act to clean up the police. There's a local government system that actually devolved power to the villages. Right? There are innovative projects such as the billion tree tsunami that have now scaled up to a much bigger level. But if you take a common thread amongst all of these, hiring teachers, hiring doctors, spending on schools, taking on more police staff, putting local governments in place and giving them funding, it's all about spending. And where money is spent, money needs to be earned as well. So when we came back in 2018, it was very clear, to me at least, coming in from the private sector, that we had to look at the other side of the equation if we were to sustain the ability to do big things. And at the same time, what we had to do was see how we can transform the way we think about spending or question. Nadeem Saab talked about something very important, which was, as long as policy, thought and action is driven by what we read in textbooks or what the donor community or the development community tell us, and we don't own the change that we want to bring in this country, we will continue to experience incremental growth and incremental progress. So in terms of the financial management of this province, it was very clear, and we made a commitment with the Chief Minister that we're going to change this. A double challenge in this 3 or 4 years has been doing this first at a time of overall financial crisis for the country in terms of the situation we inherited. Ishrat Saab knows it too well. He was trying to help us deal with it from Islamabad. And then second, a once-in-a-century pandemic. Now you get your management wrong, the economy can collapse. Right? Yes, you're going to face challenges, you're going to face inflation, you're going to face issues of governance, you're going to face many issues, but think about it. We've spent more bigger impact things in this province than we ever have in history. And we've earned more and transformed our revenue than we ever have it in history. And if we didn't break stereotype thinking, if we didn't challenge what we thought was possible and try and step out of the box, we would not have been able to do it. Biggest evidence, the universal health insurance. No donor told us to do that, and I'll get back to that later on. But you have to think of a big idea to be able to implement it, and you have to think that it's possible, and then you need to work towards it. So, in terms of trying to create a new financial culture in this province, we decided to prioritize a few things. I remember my first meeting with the Revenue Authority, where the then Chief of the Revenue Authority gave me a 30 minutes presentation, and he talked about all the people they had trained and the number of fines that had happened and the number of inspections and the number of his organization chart. There's a standard template for this in government in most departments. After 30 minutes, I stopped him. I had been smiling throughout, and I said, "It's been 30 minutes." He said, "Yes, sir, I have. I'm almost through." I said, "You haven't told me one thing." He said, "What?" "You haven't told me how much revenue you make. You're the KP Revenue Authority. What do I care about how many people you train or how many fines you give? You're here to contribute to my budget." Right? It dawned on me very clearly that in a financially challenging situation, if we were to work with the federal government on trying to give us a better deal as a province, that we had to stand up and do something difficult, which was to change the revenue culture of government. We had to earn money to earn the right to ask someone else to give us our due share. Right? Because then you can look someone in the eye and say, "Look, this is what we're doing for ourselves, but I need your help where I can't help myself." Whereas traditionally what we've done in this country is always say, take out the begging bowl and say, "Look at how poor I am, do something for me." No. As long as we don't change that, as long as we don't change our self-belief in what we think is possible, both collectively and individually, will not make a difference. So, our Chief Secretary at the time, Naveed Baloch, helped us. We shifted the Revenue Authority from the Excise Department to the Finance Department. We put in new leadership. And I told the new head of the Revenue Authority, we're going to have 2 meetings a month, and we're just going to talk about numbers. We're going to talk about the revenue that you make. Yes, you will give me a reform plan. Yes, we will fix your organization. Yes, we will fix the law. But we're here to prove to the people of this province that government's run by collecting taxes and spending those taxes for your benefit, and we have to make that happen. Three years ago, the revenue earned by the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Revenue Authority was 10 billion in a year. Next year, 16 billion. Last year, 21 billion. This year, it'll top 27 billion. And now if you look at it, that is almost 300% growth in 3 years. The previous 3 years, 10 billion, 10 billion, 10 billion. What was the difference? We decided that this was a priority for us and that we were going to make change happen. So we put good leadership in place. We put a performance incentive plan in place. We worked with the organization to motivate their workforce. That leadership stayed there for a certain amount of time. We based decisions on numbers, and we thought about every element of this. So in increasing revenue collection, we agreed that, for example, collecting sales tax on services from restaurants was going to be a priority, not because it brings in a lot of money, but because it is difficult to do. But we had to change our internal mindset, right, in terms of being able to engage customers. All of you go and eat at restaurants, and most of you who now eat at restaurants or high-end restaurants in Peshawar will see that the sales tax is added on the bill. It's politically popular to say, no, don't add it, right? But we will be repeating the mistake we always make of prioritizing very, very short-term gain for long-term loss. Because without revenue, governments can do nothing for you. Governments cannot invest in society. We changed that, and revenue from restaurants has doubled, not just doubled, has increased by about 4 times in the last 3 years. But overall, as I said, as the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Revenue Authority earnings went up from 10 to 27 billion by the time we end this year, it was very interesting. It started to have an impact on other revenue generating agencies. Last year, the Board of Revenue, which collects land revenue on land purchases, increased earnings from about 4 billion to 7 billion. And then they came to me and said, we want a similar performance incentive plan because we believe we can go even higher, and we're working on that. The Excise Department doubled property tax collection last year against a stiff target, right? And in each of these departments, because what we'd done in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Revenue Authority was increased revenue by actually reducing rates, by actually looking at segments that were or weren't paying tax and trying to just pragmatically look at how we could bring more businesses in the tax net. We saw similar innovation at other departments. On land transactions, we slashed tax rates. On urban property tax, we gave early payment discounts. And this year, of course, hopefully most of you know, that we've gone as far as, in terms of car registrations, we've slashed rates from whatever it was, 1%, 2%, 4% to 1 rupee. And we're not in this case doing that for revenue, but we're doing it to bring car users in this province back to register their cars in Pakhtunkhwa, because we need to create this overall tax cycle where government gives services to people and people recognize that by contributing to government, they are creating a better Peshawar and a better Pakhtunkhwa and a better Pakistan. In this constituency, the increased urban property tax collection is actually bringing 200 million rupees plus every year. And our new distribution framework means it will only be spent in Hayatabad, where some of you will live. Right? As that money is spent on you, you'll have better streets, you'll have better schools, you'll have better waste and sanitation networks. Right? You'll create better economies. And so, we're very proud to say, yes, this is a small province. Yes, as a percentage of the service economy, the revenue earned by the provincial government is still small. But very proud to say that in 2 years, we doubled provincial revenue from 30 billion to almost 60 billion rupees. No other province has done that. First priority, generate revenue. Why? Because it's the right principle. How? Because we paid attention to detail and did not accept that this was something this could not be done. Of course, not enough. When you typically talk about what government does in terms of spending, the first thing you always think of is development. And of course, you want to maximize development. We had a challenge when we came in, and I can now see what that challenge is, that because governments work in 5-year cycles, you end up committing lots of money on development towards the end of the 5-year cycles. It's natural, it's political. We inherited a relatively large portfolio of soft development commitments as we transitioned from one term to another. And so interesting, the first thing we did to actually maximize spend on development was to reduce development spend. What do I mean? We had made 600 billion rupees of soft commitments, and we could see that the development space we had was, in 2018, was less than 100 billion. We've just taken 6 years to get this money spent. So we decided that we were going to cut all unnecessary expenditure so that that money could be reinvested in new projects. Everyone said it couldn't be done. How are you going to ask politicians to drop development schemes? Anyway, we went through a forensic exercise of looking at development spending line by line. I remember there were about 1,200 odd projects. And we cut 200 billion of spending that we felt was not high priority. 200 billion rupees out of a portfolio of 600 billion. Think about it, 200 billion rupees. But that is 200 billion rupees of saving. Money didn't go anywhere, it's been respent over the last 3 years, and it's been respent on high priority projects. Right? The money has been available because we chose to challenge the perception that once something is on paper, you can't change that decision. Right? And in the end, the politicians backed us on it as well. The bureaucracy backed us on it as well. But we had to take a big decision. Right? So as a result of that, this year, our development portfolio is well over 300 billion rupees. And the proportion of our development budget, if you take the 3 financially bigger provinces, Sindh, Punjab, Balochistan, our development budget is almost twice the size in terms of percentage of the total budget than either of the other 2 provinces. Why is that? Because we take these big decisions. Right? And we do them ourselves. I promise you, no donor told us to do this. The World Bank didn't tell us to do this. The Asian Development Bank didn't tell us to do this. We took ownership. We made it happen. What I'm proudest of in terms of the 3 years I've spent at finance is the team we've built and the culture that we now have in finance. I joke with the finance team, the secretary and the special secretaries, that I've changed you from a department whose mission was to stop every rupee from being spent, from a department that now is actually happy to increase spending. For those in government, sounds strange, but when you actually think about it, the job of finance in any organization is not to stop spending. Because if government isn't spending, no development is going to occur, no progress is going to occur. In many places, we actually pushed what we call good spending. Right? And specifically, on what in government jargon is very unthoughtfully and unhelpfully called non-salary spend. Right? Non-salary spend is the spend that in business terms would be called operational expenditure. It's the money to run this university. It's the money to run schools and colleges and hospitals. It's the money to keep roads repaired in a good state. It's the money that almost disappeared of every budget line. We've increased non-salary spending by about 60% over the last 2 years. And it starts to show in better roads. It starts to show in a BRT service in this city that a large metropolitan city like Karachi doesn't have, but it shows in the rates that we're able to give to people who use public transport, and that investment actually helps greater economic activity across Peshawar because people can go from one end to another end, and it's increased mobility. It's starting to show in many, many hospital projects getting completed more quickly and hospitals starting to be cleaner and have the ability to invest and spend in themselves. And you'll see much more of that in the next 2 years. Because as you start to make policy changes, it takes time to implement. But this shift of managing spending, one day the finance secretary told me, "Sir, I got scolding from the chief secretary." I said, "Why?" He said, "What kind of finance is this? You say yes to everything." I said, "I take that as a badge of honor," because I said, "Your job is to see where money should be spent, and if we are convinced that money should be spent somewhere, then why should we stop people from dreaming big?" So we facilitated, for example, our rescue service to expand to every district. We actually pushed the expansion of the universal health insurance scheme to every citizen and said, "We'll make money available for it, come what may." Right? It's our job to see where else to cut funding from. We've actually pushed the largest development budgets in the history of this province in the last 2 years. And I hope we can do more. And again, why? Because we've changed conventional thinking. You haven't probably seen the whole impact of this because what we are constrained by is the international situation, the global pandemic. What we are constrained by is the large fiscal deficit that we inherited, right? Because still 75% of our budget comes from federal funding, and it will take time to change that. But there's a reason why if you just go on Google and look at any opinion polls taken over the last 3 years, you'll see the greatest satisfaction in government amongst all the federating units with this province. And that's why I'm proud to attract such a conference to Peshawar, because I hope, sir, that we can actually teach the rest of the country something, and if we can compete positively with each other, the entire country will benefit. So, wrapping up, go back to what I said in the beginning. We want to change the job market. We want all of you to have many opportunities. We want this country to have 6%, 7% growth on a sustainable basis, right? We want expatriate Pakistanis to consider whether they want a job in London or they want a job in Peshawar or Islamabad or Karachi. We're going to do it when we don't accept that things in Pakistan are always going to be the way they have been. That's going to take facing some pressure. Right? But I hope that just these examples can prove to you that this can happen, right? For me, linking this to the conference theme, these are areas where we've excelled. And I didn't talk about the Sehat card. The biggest manifestation of this is the Sehat card. I can promise you that in any other government, if the proposal for something like giving universal health insurance to every citizen in the province, which every one of you in this room everyone who has a permanent residence of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa has, and thanks to us, the rest of you will have it soon, but we led the way, and I'm proud of that. Right? I tell you what would have happened. A file would have been moved, and there would have been so many comments on why this is impossible. It would have added to the, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of files somewhere in archives of good ideas that were never thought possible. Instead, that's not the case. Instead, within a year, we have transformed both healthcare delivery as well as the health insurance industry, as well as the competitive environment for public and private hospitals, as well as how health delivery will spread across the province over the next couple of years, and transformed what's the nucleus of our health strategy. And not just in Pakhtunkhwa, as we did it, it was such a fantastic idea. It was the closest thing to the Prime Minister's vision of Riyasat-e-Madina, and it's being now implemented across the entire country. I cheated a little bit on that because I happened to be the finance minister as the file was moved, so I had to make sure I tell the secretary, if you oppose this, right, you will have hell to pay. So that little bit of sort of having a dual hat helped. But again, all it's taken is to think out of the box, and inshallah you will see that we will transform healthcare with this one initiative. A couple of reflections at the end again, right? You have to hope and you have to have ambition. If we want to progress, you have to be able to change the status quo and think differently. And all of what I talked about, increasing revenue, transforming development, bringing in the Sehat card, getting finance to actually think about providing finance rather than stopping every rupee being spent. These are examples of how practically things can change on the ground. And you see some of the results before you. We can do so much more than we've done. But I hope that what I've taught some of you is that you can dream big, that you can stay on principle, and that if there's enough of us that do this, right, Pakistan will transform. In these cases, we have taken the opportunities to excel, and I firmly believe that we've excelled at them. And I think some of the things that we should debate further is whether there's more that we can do learning from such examples in terms of creating more future opportunities to excel. I often think that wouldn't it be even better if, for example, as far as government is concerned, that we actually made one department the custodian of finances. We seem to have a very strange split between a department that looks at finances and a department that looks at the development budget, whereas for me, all of this should be done in individual sectors, right? So what I'm saying is that what I'd really like to do as the finance minister is to give every sector its budget, and then let them do as they like. because then they'll have accountability. If we can do this, we can also fix our pensions problem. If we can do this, we can also fix recruitment in government and get the best talent to come to government. If we can do this, we can also bring not just talent to government, we can bring digital to government, and we can make processes that make taking decisions easy. No one is stopping us from growing faster, from growing better, from earning more revenue, from spending and creating better cities and better communities. No one other than ourselves and the rules and the processes and the structures of government that we've imposed on ourselves. And if we change those rules, and it starts by thinking about what we believe is possible and taking on that leadership role ourselves, then we can do it. And I firmly believe that that is this country's future, and I firmly believe that some of you in this room will help to transform it. That's why I'm preaching. Nothing else left to say. Thank you very much. I hope some of you learned something from this, and it always motivates me, because I think that there is so much we can do, and I know that some spark is going to happen, and inshallah we are going to do it. Thank you so much. Pakistan Zindabad.
Very inspiring.
Thank you very much, Minister Saab, for such an enlightening speech. He kept to his promise and delivered his lecture in a very simple language, so simple that even I could understand it. And the upshot that I heard in his speech was that he cut 200 billion rupees out of 600. So all this time I was thinking, what would be the highest priority, for me at least, and that would be IM Sciences. So if we could just get a tiny 1% of that amount, we can do wonders here, we can increase our outreach, etc., etc. Anyway, that was on the lighter side. Since everything was very clear to you, he elucidated his plans, what they have done. So I will not repeat what he has said, just to sum it up. But it's heartening to know that revenues have been increased, cuts in the right places have been made, because wherever we go, everyone in the government says, yes, these are good projects, but we don't have any money. Now we know that money could be saved, it could be put in better projects, and hopefully, inshallah, they will be able to do that and support the economic development of this province at least. So without further discussions, I would invite questions from the audience, and the Minister would like to then answer them. Ji. Microphone on there. You can take this.
Thank you very much for the speech, sir. It's Hassan Umar from Islamia College, Peshawar. I am the student of BS Economics 7th semester.
Ji.
The question is, that is income inequality is a political choice in Pakistan? And do you suggest that checking inequality with tax reforms in Pakistan is a fruitful choice? And my second question is, you have already mentioned that we have doubled the revenue in the KP and reduced the expenditure in the education in the sector, especially research and development. The fact is that in 2018, the budget for the universities is 114 million, while you have cut down to the 60. After the external strikes, you have brought it down to the 69, and now currently it is 66 million. So according to this development budget, you have increased, and you have mentioned that hiring the teachers, we will increase the employment level in the Pakistan. So on the alternative side, recurring budget, you have already decreased. and it result in the financial crisis in the education sector. Thank you very much, sir.
We'll take the questions first, at least 3 questions, and then the minister will answer those questions. The lady here, please. आते आपके पास फिर आते
Hello, Assalamu alaikum, sir. This is Dr. Wakar.
Can you please stand up so we can see you?
Okay, ji. Faculty of Institute of Management Sciences. Sir, I'm here. Sir, my question or just a commentary on your talk is that we have been seeing this annual development program. So far it has been lacking that vision and mission statement or annual development program. 1, 2. Right now in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, we have only 4 districts that are on the high human development index and not very high, and that is Abbottabad, Peshawar, Mardan and Haripur. So why don't we frame our formulate our annual development program to address this human development index, and after a year you may be in a position to quantify and tell the people that these are the districts which are very low on the human development index. After spending in health of the people, after spending in education and economy of the district, we have raised this district from a very low to a low, or from low to a high human development index. So for that I mean that the present annual development program should be converted into a district development program, because the requirement of each and every district is quite different. So we cannot have an umbrella program where we cannot quantify. And lastly, about 30–40% of the budget, that is Capital 2 budget that you know are quite aware of, is being spent on the procurement of food. So each year we make certain allocations to agriculture and also irrigation. So why after a year we cannot ask them that how much increase you have brought to in your production, so that we become self-sufficient in food? Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Shagufta Shabar. I'm a PhD scholar from IBA Karachi. My question is that in June your government had announced rupees 1 billion for women empowerment. So what are some specific actions that your government has taken or is planning to take? And the reason I'm asking is that over the period of 3 days that I've been in Peshawar, I've hardly seen any local women on the roads. I've not seen a single female driver driving a car, let alone a motorbike. But yes, I've seen one female being publicly beaten in the hotel I'm staying at. So what are some specific actions that your government is planning to take? Thank you.
Sir, Mahmood Khalid from PIDE. Sir, it's always a pleasure to listen to Minister Saab all the times. Yesterday evening when we heard Professor Danny Roderick, he talked about the future of the growth for developing countries like Pakistan would be first to focus on the domestic markets, and within that the enabling environment is to be provided with the lower tier governments, not from the federation or the central part. So my question towards you is that how you look for the growth potential in an environment in when you are dependent on the federation to have the resource transfer policies, such as, for example, the State Bank recently raised the interest rates to such high levels which can affect the businesses, and other policies. How you can, from the potential perspective, bring the growth opportunities to the youth. And a small question related to that is the focus of your government versus the long-term vision. As we have just mentioned, you have prioritized certain areas. Can we know that what do you see in the future for the economy of the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa to grow upon? For example, tourism is one key sector which you are working very efficiently. Others could be related to the minerals and others. So what kind of a future do you see for KP? Thank you.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम। मेरा उबैदुल्ला नाम है और मैं यहाँ सिकाज यूनिवर्सिटी में पढ़ाता हूँ। कल मैंने इंग्लिश में क्वेश्चन पूछा था, मुझे जवाब नहीं मिला, आज उर्दू में पहुँच रहा हूँ। मुझे यूँ लगा कि हमने आपके हाथ पांव बांध के समंदर में फेंक दिया कि तैर के बता दो। तो आप बहुत मुश्किल काम कर रहे हैं, इसलिए आपसे हमदर्दी है। क्योंकि ये पूरा कॉन्फ्रेंस अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ पर है, तो मैं एक दो अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ जो मेरी नज़र से गुजरी हैं, मुमकिन है आपकी नज़र से ना गुजरी हों, तो आपको बता रहा हूँ बहुत ही मुख्तसर। सर एक है, आई वुड लाइक यू टू गूगल गिंजी मार्केट हाउस स्कीम। ये एक आइडिया है। एंड आई वुड आल्सो लाइक यू टू गूगल लिंकन्स ग्रीन बैक डॉलर। ये लिंकन ने एक तरीक़ाकार इस्तेमाल किया था अपने मुल्क को फाइनेंशियल प्रॉब्लम से निकालने के लिए। और ये भी मैं आपको बता दूं सर, जब आप ये काम करेंगे तो सबसे ज़्यादा एतराज़ बैंकिंग इंडस्ट्रीज़ को होगा। तो आप उनको ये बात बताएंगे कि पेशावर में एक बेवकूफ़ है, उसका उबैदुल्ला नाम है और सिकाज यूनिवर्सिटी में पढ़ाता है, और वो ये पूछ रहा है कि बैंक is working for income and Ubaidullah is also working for income. If bank can create money out of nothing for themselves, why Ubaidullah, why cannot Pakistan can create money for itself out of nothing? Thank you very much.
ये वैसे सारे ऐसे सवाल थे जो मेरे ख्याल में इशरत साहब और नदीम साहब और मोहसिन साहब मेरे से ज़्यादा बेहतर पोजीशन में है जवाब देने का। और ख़ास तौर पे जो उबैदुल्ला का सवाल है वो तो मेरे ख्याल में आप ही जवाब दे दें मुझे नहीं पता। मैं दो तीन चीज़ों पे कमेंट करता हूँ और मैं चाहूँगा कि यहाँ पे ये वाकई कुछ सवाल ऐसे थे जो कि इतने ब्रॉड हैं कि मेरे से बहुत ज़्यादा डिस्टिंग्विश्ड पैनल बैठा है कि उनके व्यूज़ हम इन पे ज़रूर सुन लें। जो दो तीन चीज़ों पे मैं कमेंट करना चाहूँगा, एक तो ये कि यूनिवर्सिटीज़ के बजट पे बात हुई। मैंने ऊपर एक बात कही कि देखिए मैं ये चाहता हूँ कि एंड आई वांट टू थ्रो दिस, क्योंकि यहाँ पे बहुत से ओपिनियन मेकर्स हैं। मेरे ख्याल में जो हमारा जो बजट की सेगमेंटेशन है कि ये डेवलपमेंट बजट है और ये करंट बजट है, मेरे ख्याल में ये बिल्कुल गलत है। किसी वक्त हमें ये बदलना है, बहुत बड़ा डिसीजन होगा। क्यों? हम कहते हैं यूनिवर्सिटीज़ का बजट कम हो गया। डेवलपमेंट बजट क्या होता है? डेवलपमेंट बजट वो पैसा होता है जो हम नई बिल्डिंग्स पे बनाते हैं, उसमें वो पैसा इंक्लूडेड ही नहीं होता जो यूनिवर्सिटीज़ के चलाने को जो ग्रांट्स मिलते हैं। अगर आप दोनों को अलहदा रखेंगे, एक तो आपको टोटल नंबर नहीं पता चलता, दूसरा सिर्फ यूनिवर्सिटीज़ नहीं, हर डिपार्टमेंट जाता है फाइनेंस से जाके भीख मांगता है हमें कुछ पैसे दो, वहाँ प्लानिंग के पास जाता है हमें कुछ पैसे दो। ट्रांसपेरेंसी सारी ख़त्म हो जाती है और किसी को नहीं पता होता कि क्या हो रहा है। हमने यहाँ पे जहाँ तक मुमकिन हो फाइनेंस को और पीएनडी को फंक्शनली इंटीग्रेट कर दिया ताकि हम सबके बजट एक साथ देख सकें। और आइडियली ये होना ही नहीं चाहिए। मेरे ख्याल में आपको एक डिपार्टमेंट के साथ या एक सेक्टर के साथ उनका टोटल आउटले फाइनलाइज करना चाहिए और उस सेक्टर को ये डिसाइड करना चाहिए कि उन्होंने नई बिल्डिंग्स बनानी है या आईएम साइंसेज या पेशावर यूनिवर्सिटी या किसी और यूनिवर्सिटी को ज़्यादा पैसे देने। ये मेरे ख्याल में एक दिस इज़ समथिंग इम्पॉर्टेंट जिस पे सोचना चाहिए कि हमने एक बजटिंग फ्रेमवर्क ऐसे बना दिया है जहाँ पे ये सारी चीज़ें छुप जाती हैं। खैर आई थिंक अगर आप टोटली देखें तो इन अ टोटल मैनर हमारे हायर एजुकेशन सेक्टर का नेशनली बजट ज़्यादा हो रहा है। लेकिन 2 और 3 थिंग्स, हायर एजुकेशन दुनिया में कहीं भी पूरे पॉपुलेशन के लिए नहीं होती, हम समझते हैं कि सबके लिए होती है। हमें हायर एजुकेशन के मॉडल में कुछ तब्दीलियां लॉन्ग टर्म करनी पड़ेंगी। अगर आप हमारा फ़ी स्ट्रक्चर देखें पब्लिक सेक्टर में, एक मेडिकल कॉलेज में साल के 20,000 रुपए लगते हैं, अमीर के लिए भी गरीब के लिए भी, उस पर खर्चा 12 लाख आता है। जो मैंने शुरू में रेवेन्यू की बात की, कहीं से पैसा आएगा तो वो आप लगाएंगे। और अगर हमारी ये एम्बिशन है कि हम पाकिस्तान के हर ज़िले में एक यूनिवर्सिटी बनाएं, तो कहीं से तो वो फाइनेंस होनी है, कहीं ना कहीं उन यूनिवर्सिटीज़ के इश्यूज आएंगे। ये पहला साल होगा खैबर पख्तूनख्वा टॉप अप फंडिंग यूनिवर्सिटीज़ को देगा। यूनिवर्सिटीज़ का बजट फेडरल गवर्नमेंट से आता है, मैं इस पर खुश नहीं हूँ, लेकिन हमें अपनी यूनिवर्सिटीज़ चलानी है। लेकिन वो टॉप अप बजट देने के लिए हम यूनिवर्सिटीज़ के साथ बैठ रहे हैं और कुछ कंडीशंस तय कर रहे हैं कि आपने अपनी भी कॉस्ट मैनेजमेंट करनी है, आपने अपने रेवेन्यू जनरेशन को भी देखना है, क्योंकि ये काम ऐसे नहीं चल सकता। यूनिवर्सिटीज़ का मकसद है लीडरशिप क्रिएट करना, ना भर्तियाँ करना, ना 22 करोड़ लोगों को वो बीए या बीएस की डिग्रीज देना जिनका जॉब मार्केट नहीं है। सो जस्ट फूड फॉर थॉट ऑन दैट, एक चीज़। दूसरी चीज़, जो फूड की बात की, एग्रीकल्चर की बात की कि डिपार्टमेंट्स का बजट रिजल्ट्स को टाई होना चाहिए, बिल्कुल होना चाहिए, और हम कर रहे हैं। हमने बहुत से डिपार्टमेंट्स को वो देना शुरू किया है। जो चैलेंज है, देखिए क्यों ये जो एक बात हम कहते हैं कि एक साल में सारे मसले नहीं हल होते, दिस इज ट्रू, बिकॉज हमारे पास वो डेटा और सिस्टम्स ही नहीं है कि हम हर डिपार्टमेंट में रिजल्ट्स देखें, बजट देखें, और फिर जब हमने बजट को स्प्लिट किया तो कोई एक डिपार्टमेंट तो बात ही नहीं कर रहा एज फार एज द फाइनेंशियल कॉन्वर्सेशन इज कंसर्न्ड। बट दिस इज एन एब्सोल्युटली वैलिड पॉइंट। दो चीज़ों को मैं जो है वो टाई करूंगा। जो सवाल था, एक कि हाउ डू वी इंश्योर ग्रोथ, और दूसरा कि खैबर पख्तूनख्वा की फ्यूचर इकॉनमी क्या है। मेरे ख्याल में जो हमें दो चीज़ें कंसिस्टेंटली करनी है ग्रोथ के लिए, एक ये है ख़ास तौर पे यहाँ पे कि हम अपनी गवर्नमेंट की स्पेंडिंग पे कॉम्प्रोमाइज़ ना करें। ये पिछले 2 साल में बहुत ज़रूरी था कोविड के माहौल में, क्योंकि यहाँ पे हमारा प्राइवेट सेक्टर थोड़ा सा छोटा है सिंध और पंजाब के मुकाबले में, तो गवर्नमेंट की स्पेंडिंग जो है वो टोटल इकोनॉमी का थोड़ा ज़्यादा हिस्सा है। तो जो मैंने बार बार कहा कि पिछले 2 साल में जो डिपार्टमेंट से बात होती थी, हम स्पेंडिंग को नहीं रोकेंगे, हम वो पैसा कहीं से ढूंढेंगे, क्योंकि वो स्पेंडिंग इकोनॉमी को चलाएगी। और आप जाके देख लें, महंगाई होगी, महंगाई एक चैलेंज है पूरी दुनिया में। आज के अखबार में है कि टर्किश लीरा एक दिन में 15% डॉलर के अगेंस्ट जो है वो डिप्रिसिएट हुआ है। वो चैलेंज इसलिए है क्योंकि वंस इन अ सेंचुरी पैंडेमिक आया है। लेकिन आप पेशावर में जाके देखें, आपको बाजार खाली नहीं नजर आएंगे, आपको इकोनॉमिक एक्टिविटी नजर आएगी। उसी की वजह से हमारी इकोनॉमी सिर्फ बची हुई नहीं है, हमने 4% ग्रोथ अचीव की है। और मेरे ख्याल में अगर हम प्रोविंशियली डिसएग्रीगेट कर सके तो खैबर पख्तूनख्वा में वो ज़्यादा होगी। जो फ्यूचर इकोनॉमी है हमारी, वो आपने बिल्कुल ठीक कहा। ग्रोथ की दूसरी चीज़ है प्राइवेट सेक्टर को एनकरेज करना, और उसके लिए गवर्नमेंट का रेगुलेटरी जो फ्रेमवर्क है उसको कम से कम करना। वो बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज है। हम कर रहे हैं जहाँ पे हम कर चुके हैं। मसलन हम जब सेहत कार्ड बना रहे थे, उसमें पहले डिस्ट्रिक्ट टू डिस्ट्रिक्ट रेफरल्स होती थी, हमने वो रेफरल्स का सिस्टम ख़त्म कर दिया। उससे रिश्वत की पॉसिबिलिटी भी ख़त्म, लोग वहाँ पे जा सकते हैं जहाँ पे अस्पताल बेहतर है। सिंपल एक मिसाल है, लेकिन रेगुलेटरी फ्रेमवर्क को हम जो है रेड टेप को हम ख़त्म करेंगे तो प्राइवेट सेक्टर आएगा। जितना प्राइवेट सेक्टर आएगा उतनी ग्रोथ ज़्यादा होगी। ख़ास तौर पे हमें पेशावर में प्राइवेट सेक्टर को अट्रैक्ट करना है। जो नदीमुल हक साहब ने बात की, हमें लोगों को जॉब अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ अगर देनी है तो वो प्राइवेट सेक्टर से आएंगी। एंड वी मेकिंग अ बिग पुश कि यहाँ पे आईटी कंपनीज आएँ। ग्रोथ आप बिल्कुल ठीक कह रहे हैं, हम टूरिज्म इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में इन्वेस्ट करेंगे, टूरिज्म से आएगी, माइंस एंड मिनरल्स से आएगी, एनर्जी सेक्टर से आएगी, सर्विस सेक्टर से आएगी, और मेरे ख्याल में हेल्थ सेक्टर से भी आएगी। हम हेल्थ कार्ड के थ्रू 20 अरब रुपए लगा रहे हैं साल के, उसमें 15 अरब प्राइवेट सेक्टर को जा रहे हैं। वो जॉब्स भी जनरेट कर रहा है, वो इन्वेस्टमेंट्स भी जनरेट कर रहा है, और वो हेल्थ डिलीवरी भी कर रहा है। वो ग्रोथ जनरेट करेगा। मुझे यहाँ करीबी एक मेजर हॉस्पिटल है, उन्होंने अभी एक डायलिसिस सेंटर बनाया है। क्यों? क्योंकि वो सेहत कार्ड में कवर्ड है। और ये सारे सूबे में होगा अभी। तो इस टाइप की थिंकिंग और एक्शन करके हम ग्रोथ जनरेट करेंगे। मेरे ख्याल में इसमें हमें इशरत साहब, नदीम साहब बहुत ज़्यादा सिखा भी सकते हैं, तो आई वुड लाइक देम टू कमेंट ऑन दैट। और जो आखिरी चीज़ मैंने छोड़ी थी, बट सर्टनली नॉट द लीस्ट इम्पॉर्टेंट, इन फैक्ट आई थिंक परहैप्स द मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टेंट, वो ख़वातीन का क्वेश्चन था। हम पाकिस्तान में कहीं भी वी आर नॉट डूइंग इनफ फॉर वुमेन, ये मैं ब्लैक एंड वाइट कह दूँ, राइट। हमारी तकरीबन 50% लेबर फोर्स में है ही नहीं। तो वो जो इकोनॉमिक पोटेंशियल है वो तो हमने एक साइड को रख दिया। अगेन वो हम दिन में नहीं फिक्स कर सकते, हमें कल्चर रिस्पेक्ट करना है। यहाँ पे ख़वातीन ड्राइव करती हैं, ये आप तालिबान टेरिटरी में नहीं है, आप कराची में आए, यहाँ भी ख़वातीन ड्राइव करती हैं, यहाँ पे ख़वातीन काम भी करती हैं, और ये यहाँ की ख़वातीन ही क्लैप कर रही हैं, और यहाँ की ख़वातीन जाके कराची में भी काम करती हैं, कराची से पेशावर कम आती है, तो दे हैव मोर एंटरप्रेन्योरियल स्पिरिट। लेकिन आई बिलीव, अच्छा बाय द वे वी हैव सच फैंटास्टिक वुमेन। आई नो समवन जो कि फार्मूला 1 विलियम्स की टीम पे इंजीनियर थी, बताएं। बट हमें, मेरे ख्याल में ये जो 1 बिलियन है, इसमें हम इन्वेस्टमेंट भी करेंगे, हमें ये जो है ख़वातीन की प्रोटेक्शन पे भी लगाना है। एंड अगेन व्हाट वी डोंट हैव both in Pukhtunkhwa and across the country, मेरे ख्याल में is enough champions of women development। और अक्सर जो ख़वातीन की डेवलपमेंट का डायलॉग होता है वो गवर्नमेंट डिपार्टमेंट्स और डोनर्स के दरमियान अच्छी अच्छी किताबों में होता है। एक चीज़ मैं स्पीच में कहना भूल गया, फॉर मी पॉलिसी इज़ वेरी सेकेंडरी। आई बिलीव इन 3 words, डोंट थिंक, डू। राइट, सोचे, प्लान बनाए, वो हमने 70 साल कर दिया, हमने काम करना है। बट ये मैं रिकग्नाइज करता हूँ और मैं इसलिए कह रहा हूँ कि हमें बहुत करना है। बट वी आर इन द प्रोसेस ऑफ गेटिंग जो सम ऑफ आवर मोस्ट प्रोग्रेसिव MPAs जो ख़वातीन हैं, क्योंकि उन्होंने ये चैम्पियन करना है। एंड इंशाल्लाह we'll have this conversation again in a year and not tell you कि हम क्या प्लान कर रहे हैं, वो प्लान मैं आपको सारा दिखा सकता हूँ, बट आई वांट टू टेल यू कि हमने इसके साथ किया क्या, एंड दैट्स द टाइम टू टॉक अबाउट इट। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
Thank you, Taimur Salim Jhagrra Saab, Dr. Ishrat Saab and Nadeem Saab. We'll close this session here because we are already getting late for the next session. And thank you very much to the audience. You've been a very receptive audience.
Okay.